What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So if this is your first time on the Video Game Fight School channel, welcome to the community. And those of you who've been recently joining, I just wanted to say I hope you stick around and thank you so much for all of your input. Today we're going to be looking at something that's really important. That is a conversation that's been going on in this community for the past few years, and that is the comparison of Gotham Knights to Arkham Knight as the game or the Arkham series. Now, for the longest time, when we first saw Gotham Knights in 2020, there was a lot of comparison to Arkham. A lot of people were saying, man, I wish this game would look like Arkham. I wish this game would play like Arkham. I wonder why they're not doing some of these things like Arkham. And since then, Gotham Knights has just lived under the shadow of Arkham. At the same time, there are people in the community who have said, can we stick away from judging this game under the Arkham umbrella? What is such a big deal about the Arkham games? The Arkham games have these mechanics where, Batman and the other heroes that are therein will zip from one point to the other and punch and take down 20 guys at the same time. Gotham Knights is trying to achieve something different. And so we need to go ahead and respect that. And I understand that side of the conversation as well. I can see that being something that's actually quite a viable claim. But there is something we have to really consider, and this is something we've talked about in the past before. We've talked about how even the Spider-Man games, Marvel Spider-Man games, their developers mentioned how Arkham was kind of the foundation for them. And somebody even said something that was quite interesting on one of my videos. They said, why do we have to look at some kind of past nostalgic game when we're looking forward to Gotham? And they refer to Arkham as a past nostalgic game. And I wanted to go ahead and kind of see if we can come to terms to see why Arkham is pivotal in looking forward to some of these other games. So let's go ahead and start out with the Arkham games that kind of, in a sense, overlapped with the Spider-Man games of the new generation, and that's basically Batman Arkham Knight. Batman Arkham Knight as well as Spider-Man 2018 were both games in the same console generation. If you go back, say maybe Arkham City or Arkham Asylum, you can probably say, okay, those were in a past generation, and if you want to compare, you can probably compare those games to the older Spider-Man games. I can concede. I can actually give that and say, yes, that's probably a fair comparison if you were to ask me. But here's a really interesting thing. Even Batman Arkham Knight is such a wonderful game in terms of environment, gameplay mechanics, and all of the above that it has received a lot of critical acclaim. And it was basically one of the games that, spurred on the conversation as to how superhero games were going to continue to evolve after Batman Arkham Asylum had already raised the bar and set the standard. And so this is something that's actually very important. Now, in regard to the look and feel of Gotham Knights, I want to argue for Gotham Knights being able to develop its own world, being able to showcase its own game in its own story and setting. But nonetheless, there are many people who, when they look and see, oh, this is a Gotham Knights game, we wonder if it's actually going to meet the quality that's already available in, say, the Arkham universe. And that quality is, what is the environment going to look like? That quality is what exactly this game is going to actually present. And many people find themselves in a position where they're actually comparing it to Arkham Knight. But also, here is something that's really important in regard to both games. You see, back in the day, Warner Brothers Games Montreal was tasked with creating an Arkham game. And in that process, something very important happened. And this is a testament to why many of us continue to compare both games in terms of gameplay. So I'm moving over now from the environment comparison into gameplay features and all of the above, and why I think we continue to do this. So listen to the words of the former executive director at Warner Brothers Games Montreal. I think his name is Ben Mattis, and he basically said something that was very pivotal at the time that they were developing Batman Arkham Origins.
First question, obviously the obvious question is, what was the handover like between yourselves and Rocksteady? How did this all kick off?
Sure. Well, it was a great start, right? Rocksteady gave us all of the code, all of the assets. We inherited everything from Arkham Asylum and Arkham City to launch into the development of Origins. You couldn't ask for a stronger launching point, right? And so that was a wonderful place to start from. And then from there, we were given, just this incredible creative liberty to tell our story, to make our game within the Arkham universe. As you know, given the title, Arkham Origins, we have definitely focused on the early career Batman, the origins of this character, and some of the absolutely pivotal foundational moments that we think shape him and created the Batman that players obviously know and love from Asylum and City.
Now, at the time, they were given this task, and according to him, once they eventually realized that they were going to be making this game, there was some kind of a communication and kind of a handover or a stewardship that was given to them at Warner Brothers Games Montreal with all of the code, all of the assets, and a whole bunch of material that basically Rocksteady handed to them in their development process that helped them to kick the development of their game into gear. For those of us who value Arkham Origins, I think we can say, oh, it is because of this particular concept that they were able to go ahead and get these aspects, and they could build their own game around all of the treasure that they got from Rocksteady. So they basically got the files from Arkham City and they just used it. They reversed engineered a few things in terms of, you know, the game's look, the game's feel, sound, some animations, some gadgets to be able to tell a story that was a prequel to Arkham Asylum, and they were able to deliver a very good game. Also, we got to keep in mind too that Arkham Origins is not necessarily the most polished game in terms of all the Arkham games, and I have to be very, very objective about this. I've played these games, you know, insane amounts of hours, and I've just got to say that, you know, its optimization is not necessarily the best, but it is still a strong entry into the Arkham games. Another thing that really does make the Arkham games very special and makes everybody come to this position where we're talking about, okay, the Arkham games continue to be this standard or this beacon for us to be able to look and say this is what superhero games should be, is not necessarily for some random reason where we're just fans who've lost our minds. It's because the Arkham games were specifically curtailed to appeal to the fans of this superhero, and that's Batman. And not only that, there were so many and are so many elements that this character is basically bringing from all the trove of Batman storytelling into the video game. Most of those things are just things like, you know, Batman's ways of traversal, as well as all kinds of really cool stuff. He traverses in the comics, in the animated series, using a grapple gun. This is something that if you were maybe reading a Batman comic and Batman grapples, the video game actually is the best representation so far of Batman actually grappling around the city. Him gliding around the city, the video game shows you and gives you the best depiction of him doing that. In combat, many people don't necessarily talk about this very much, but almost all of the animations for Batman fighting in the Arkham games are actually depicted from the comics or the animated series. Not only is he just punching people all over the place, he's actually hitting or fighting and attacking with specific moves that have been established throughout the canon of telling Batman stories. In fact, it's so obvious that you can actually see the animations play out so well, and you can look and say, wow, I've seen Batman do that before in either a comic or either an animated series. And even yet, the Arkham games are so pivotal that they influence the cinematic side of the storytelling of Batman. I mean, if you really want to go back and look at the cinematic, you look at maybe, say, Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice. Many of you are probably aware of the warehouse fight scene. I mean, if you've not watched that movie, I'm sorry, but spoilers are about to show up. And in that particular warehouse fight scene, there are so many Arkham / comic references that the director Zack Snyder threw into that one fight scene. I mean, it was, you know, an extended fight scene. Batman is taking on at least a dozen guys, and you can really see how he paid a huge homage to exactly what this particular core of the Arkham series had actually put in place. It's not something to be overlooked. There is no way to look at something that is so shiny and look at something that is actually, in a sense, related to something so shiny and not compare both of them together. That's weird. If we all just looked away and said, oh, we're not going to look at Arkham, we're just going to say Gotham Knights is its own thing, it really makes us look like we are, you know, suffering from some kind of mental gymnastics. And I think it's fair as a comparison because Warner Brothers Games Montreal themselves have used the Arkham games as a foundation and a pivot to build one of their previous games. In fact, their only published game, and that game did very well in terms of its reception into the Arkham collection. So when we look at Gotham Knights, If the developers are deciding to go a different direction, there's no problem with that, in my opinion. I think that's their own vision. I think that's their entire business, to be able to take the game to whatever it is that they want to take the game to. But they will be judged and compared to other superhero games. It doesn't necessarily have to be Arkham, but it will still probably or possibly be games that come out in that same light, in that same aspect of their own game. And guess the next superhero game that's on the table to be coming out? It's Spider-Man 2. Can you imagine Gotham Knights being judged or compared to Spider-Man 2? Do you know what's going to happen to this game if it does not meet that expectation? I rest my case. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys so much. Hopefully we'll talk very soon. Peace out.